The past 2 days have been eaten up by Ampeg SVTs. This will make a nice change from that. Very nice guy brought this old 64 Vox AC4 up from New Orleans today for me to go through. Wants a general clean bill of health, and he says the tremolo doesn't work very well. So let's see what's going on with that and see if we can make it work very well. Let's see what awaits us inside this amp. You can see the original very small 8-inch speaker. It's got a grounded cable with a UK plug, or at least the plug is grounded. It's a very thin wire, very thin cable if that's actually grounded. I'd be surprised. Has an adorable little foot switch for the tremolo. Before I can take the chassis out, I need to disconnect this little inline speaker connector. I've not seen that before, but I'll disconnect that. I need 2 hands for that, so let me pause here. It's got what seems to be a mixture of original and non-original flathead screws. Brass, like most of the JMI Era stuff. Let's see, I need to get one that fits there really well. That fits well. If it doesn't fit, it just chews up the brass screw head. I'm not a fan of flathead screws for many reasons. They make my life difficult, and they like to get mangled. But people swear by them, and I, in turn, swear at them. With the exception of the power cable, which is grounded, which is nice, everything else in here seems to be original. So before I do anything, I want to make sure there's no voltage waiting to get me. I doubt there will be, but it's always good to check. Nah. I can touch it with impunity as long as it's not plugged into the wall. Fairly basic circuit, not a lot to it. I'm going to have to look at it a little bit closer than I can see it right now to get a sense of what's going on. But I'll tell you, the first plan is just to change out the filter caps and the cathode bypass caps that you see here, all the electrolytics, and then we'll see if the mustards are good and the resistors. They look like likely candidates to be good, but resistors and Voxes of this era don't always last. That one's got, I can't tell if that's discoloration or just the blue paint has smudged a little bit. Let me take a look up close, then I'll report any specific findings. This should be a fairly easy thing to do. It's got a 2-section filter can cap. I would probably be inclined to replace that with individual capacitors rather than an old can cap, but I will talk to the owner about it. I've got the schematic in a book here of various JMI era stuff. I'll look it up and get more familiar, but this looks like it's a cathode follower with pin 1 with a resistor going to pin 6 and a jumper to pin 2. But also at pin 2, which means also at pin 6, there's this cap to ground. And that cap to ground is extraordinarily close, if not touching, pin 1. And that can seriously throw off the operation of that stage as a whole. So before I apply any power, get as much separation as that capacitor allows. It's a very large value to go to ground off a plate. That's a lot better, I'm pretty sure. I need to make sure I can't see from all angles while looking through the phone, the camera, but believe it or not, that's a huge increase in distance compared to pretty much touching it. So I look forward to seeing what this sounds like. I gotta go through the schematic and see what the small caps are. They all look like 25 microfarads, so I've got those. And then these 2 filters and this filter. And the way this filter is attached is a pretty good way for me to replace this one in a similar vein. Interestingly, unlike its big brothers from this era, both sides of the heaters are used throughout, and it doesn't seem to have either side of the heaters going to ground, rather it seems to have a heater center tap going to ground. From one perspective, this should hum less than its more expensive big brothers. there's that resistor that from 2 feet away I was concerned was dark. That's just that blue is a very wide band. All right. We'll look stuff up and make a list of the caps I will need, and this will be an easy, fun project. Nice after all those SVTs. A minute ago I misspoke. I said that this cap was going to ground. I wasn't looking carefully. That's not a ground terminal. It's actually isolated from the chassis. This is the first of 3 caps in the LFO, and they go from the plate to here and then to the grid, all on this triode here, even though it's connected over here, because pin 2 is joined to pin 6 here. But on this side, it was contacting pin 1, which meant that the cathode follower side was not going to conduct, so that's probably why the tremolo wasn't working. Now that that's been moved, the cathode follower should be fine, and the cathode follower in this stage is connected to the cathode of this pentode tube, which is the actual preamp tube. It's going to modulate the bias of the preamp tube that way, the pentode. So this should be cool to hear how it's working. This cap touching both pins 2 and pin 1 is probably why the tremolo was out. Now I still got to change out all these electrolytics, but one mystery solved in pretty good time.